Hey, it's me again, and I just wanted to make another hers video about some of the things I did to avoid some of the side effects from the medications in the medication kit 1. And first of all, I want to say I am not a doctor, and I pretty much did all the things that they just told you to do off the website or from the doctor's advice or the prescription pamphlets, and just things that I knew from taking meds previously in my life. So this is just advice that I'm giving you, and you do not need to take it, but this is just stuff I think I was able to avoid any really big major setbacks due to side effects. And I would recommend a lot of these things for anyone who has issues like introducing new medications into their routines or even new supplements, to be honest. So, the first thing I have to say is what I think you need to do is, for me, I planned on starting the medications and doing my weekly weigh-ins on my first day of my weekend. So that is for me on Saturday. I have a Monday through Friday work week, and so I started this in the winter. If you saw my previous video, I started like at the beginning of December. So that's kind of like a down season for me at work. And so luckily, I pretty much just had Monday through Fridays. I didn't have to do a lot of work over the weekend, but I absolutely could not be going into work with a ton of side effects. So I wanted to make sure if I was going to be starting medications, I needed to do it on Saturday and Sunday. So if I needed to either just like stop this, that I would, have a little bit of time to let it clear out. Or if I just needed to get used to it, I had time to do that also. It also just gives you time to work out your morning routine, work out like what foods you're gonna like. So I just recommend, if you like have either 2 days off during the week or just like a lower workload day, to just make sure that those are kind of your like timestamp time for you in your like weight loss tracking. I see some people want to do it in the middle of the week, which I don't understand, but for me it made the most sense to do that on Saturday. It was kind of a bummer because you kind of go through your weekend and your weight loss would kind of just be like weird, but now that I've kind of hit whatever plateau of my maintaining, it really doesn't end up mattering once you kind of hit where you're going to have your baseline. So in the end, it really won't matter what day of the week you're tracking it. Just kind of make sure that when you're titrating up in those first few weeks, you make sure that you have kind of time to lie low and not be going into your like maybe your 12-hour work shift. Don't do that and be starting like a drug that could give you brain fog or dizziness or jitteriness or numbness in your hands. That's not a good idea. That being said, another thing that I recommend is that they tell you over and over again to drink water. And I think the reason why you need to drink water is you're putting medication pills. You're putting something that your body needs to filter out. So you're going to get like asked things about your kidneys, and hopefully you're truthful. Like obviously you're not having kidney failure, but please be kind to yourself. Like drink water so that your body can filter this out, because it's just a new thing for you to process. So it just helps you get it out of your system a little bit quicker. It just helps everything, you digest all this like maybe different foods you're going to be eating, and it just helps you get through your day a lot quicker if you're just drinking a lot more water. And I don't recommend you start that on day 1. You need to start drinking a lot of water like day -3, because that just needs to be like a routine for you. And however you can get water, it doesn't even have to be water. Like water can be flavored water, it can be whatever kind of drinks, anything that's not like too high sugar, as long as it's liquids inside of you that can help you filter things out. That's what you need to get. Like for me, my water started tasting weird, so I had to put lemons in it. But I knew, like, if I quit drinking water, it wasn't going to be a good thing for me. The next thing that I would recommend is to keep your eating schedule fairly normal. So if you're coming into this, I came into this with like a pretty educated, like I was eating pretty regular at this phase. Like I had just a normal, like I would eat like a whole grain English muffin. I'm sorry, it's just like what I used to eat was just all that different from what I eat now. I would eat like a whole grain English muffin, and then I would do like one of those little egg thingies with egg whites, and then I would like cover that with cheese, and I would eat that every single morning before, and I would maybe go to the gym just to kind of stretch and stuff, because I was having kind of like a lot more joint issues than I have now, and losing weight has since helped with a lot of my mobility issues, but that I just kind of don't have to spend quite as much time in the gym, honestly, to deal with that. But I would recommend that you try to just, if you have a completely very unhealthy eating habits, yes, you need to go and get foods that are a lot more balanced than what you're eating currently, and look at your macros and make sure that you're going to be getting enough protein, carbs, and fats that's going to be eating in a calorie deficit. But if you're already like dieting and you're just not really understanding why, like kind of in the place I was, where I was dieting but the scale wasn't moving, I didn't really like try to change much in my diet. I just kind of kept my diet the same, but I made sure to have a lot of foods on hand that I knew were not going to cause like gastrointestinal upset, if that made sense. But what I would probably recommend to anyone starting now doing this and knowing what I know is I would probably recommend, like I would probably buy like a week's worth of food, and that's probably it. And then have just kind of like your pantry safe, stable things on hand, because the medications really change your cravings quite a bit. So you aren't going to maybe be okay with the foods that you really liked for a long time. So you may not even really like the foods that you were dieting. Like I hated ketchup and like potatoes, which was something that was like my jam for like my whole life. Now I can eat them, but I like could not stand them. And then I was not a very big like rice person, and then through the first couple months, like I like lived off of stir fry, and that was kind of like my big like meal that I would have. It was like a lot of like of that, just like diced chicken and broccoli and pineapple and bell peppers just diced together with some sort of sauce, and that would be a lot of my dinners. But I think that if you can just kind of have rice and beans, maybe that you can just have it on your shelf, that would be stable, so that if it sounds good to you, you can pull it out. But I wouldn't maybe buy things that can spoil, because you're not going to maybe know where the appetite suppression is going to lead you through this when it comes to the meds, because it may surprise you how suppressed your appetite becomes. And I think that really does come under the like veil of side effects, because that is a side effect of the medication, is food suppression, because that's like the main thing that we're doing this for, right? So consider that your appetite is going to be suppressed, but your hunger will not be suppressed, if that makes sense. Like throughout the day, I would still be like, gosh, I'm really hungry, like I need to eat something, and I would still have like hunger signals, but I would not have like any sort of like obsessive want or desires for like a specific food. It would more just be like I like need thought like food for my body to go and function as like the machine or like the vessel it is, more than it is like I'm really craving, like, because this is during Christmas time, so of course like you're craving like those iconic like homey things that you're always craving. So it was really awesome because I didn't have that like, oh, I'm craving like all those things I really want at those Christmas parties, like so and so's like smokies or mashed potatoes or mac and cheese or cookies and things. It was really nice because it was just more of like you could just go and maybe like try one thing and you wouldn't have any sort of like obsession over things because of your food noise was so much lower. So another thing that you need to be prepared for is I did experience what I would say is like numbness and tingling in my fingers, and I believe that it helped when I started taking a supplement with magnesium for that, and I don't know if that will help anyone else. And I talked about it in my other video that for me it's a migraine gummy, and so it has like an extra, like a stupid amount of magnesium glycinate in it. And I've even looked at like, I ran out of it while I was traveling and bought like over-the-counter magnesium glycinate, and it's not even comparable the amount they recommend for servings wise for like your daily magnesium supplement versus like the amount of servings they have in that gummy. So I think for like the neurological function of numbness and tingling, you just need to maybe take something that's for that symptom. Like with my migraine gummy, it really helped. And so that's the Althea migraine gummy, and I'm not sure if I noticed once I started taking it, it went away. So was that the reason? I can't like guarantee that's why, but like I don't have any restless legs, and I don't have like basically I would drive to work every morning and I could feel like at 8:30 every day like numbness in my hands, and that's the symptoms I see a lot of other people talk about, and then it would go away. So I don't know, I just have to attribute it to that. And then another symptom that I was probably like, honestly, I didn't talk about it in my other video, but I would say it was probably like maybe one of my least favorite things about the medications was before I started all of this, I was a very sound sleeper. Like, and not sound, I would say I would go to bed and I would just like fall asleep very easily. So I would maybe be wary if you have issues with, like, if you are like a terrible insomniac, or you have a history of sleeping issues with this medication, because I, for this, have had no issues staying asleep or going to sleep. Like, whenever I do have like a bad night with sleep because of like I have a cold and I can't like breathe well, I'm just like, I don't know how people do it. I feel so bad for people with insomnia. But when I first started, and I believe it's probably due to the bupropion, just because it like ups your like, kind of gives you a little bit more of anxiety and gives you a little bit of an upper. I noticed that it was a little bit tougher for me to go to sleep. It ain't like in the way that it's hard for you to go to sleep if you drink caffeine, like, you know, after 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. in that way, where you just kind of, or what I imagine it would be like to have mild, like insomnia. And I think two things helped me kind of settle things, or maybe three things helped. I didn't immediately stop drinking caffeine. I didn't know about you needing to not take that and bupropion. So I quit drinking caffeine, and is number one. Number two, the migraine gummy. So magnesium supplement, whichever you decide. But I know magnesium glycinate is kind of a gold standard for sleep issues. And then number three, I've been taking, it's called 5-hydroxytryptophan. And I take that, and I take the Thorn. I've tried taking other versions of it, but I found I've liked the Thorn version of it best. And I do find, like, just mood wise, I just feel like a lot better when I'm on that. So I think that does have like something to do with falling asleep too, but I'm sure there are 100 other things you can do. But I would definitely say if you have horrible issues with sleeping, that maybe that this medication kit, I'd be maybe a little wary of it. But if you're like me and you kind of maybe have a more physical job and you don't really have a lot of issues falling asleep, that this, you can probably get through those first couple weeks of, and not a couple weeks, I would say it was probably just the first few nights where I was like, I'm not just like falling asleep and wanting to stay asleep. It was more like, oh, like this is taking me a little bit longer to fall asleep, and then when I wake up, I'm like awake immediately. So it's just a little bit different, of a different feeling from how I'd been for a long time. And especially it being like in the winter in the Pacific Northwest, it's just a different, it's kind of like changing your sleep schedule overnight is just a little shocking. Now the last thing I want to talk about is basically like you are titrating up. So I talked about starting on the weekend and making sure that you can like adjust to this, and drinking and eating. And so you can really just titrate up at whatever schedule you want to, and you can involve the doctors how you want, because everyone's food noise and everyone's size is different. So like I've seen people on Reddit say that they never even went off the first week like titration. Like they started and then their food noise crashed so low that they didn't ever feel the need to up it. And then there's some people that really needed to like increase like their metformin, or needed to increase their other meds in the kit. So you may just need to talk to them. But for me, I think I stayed an extra week. What did I do? When I introduced the metformin, I did not introduce the increase of the naltrexone and topiramate. I think that's what I did. And that being, when I increased the metformin, you really it does like, you get TMI, you will get constipated. And I think that like there's like a few factors that go into the constipation. So first of all, you've quit drinking caffeine. You're not drinking any coffee. You really do need to be upping your water. And then you're really not eating as much food as you've been eating for a really long time. So you're not really having the calories you were once having for a very long time, and you've kind of changed, like rocked. For some people, like for me, I changed my whole diet. Like I introduced a lot of different grains and starches and carbs to my food diet that I hadn't in a long time. But I didn't really have I went from maybe having, and this is like so much TMI, but the Reddit, like people are all talking about this all the time, so whatever. But people are like, I am not like having bowel movements for, like weeks or whatever, or not weeks, maybe like a whole week. But I think like it's pretty normal on there. Like some people maybe went from going maybe like several times a day to then just maybe going like every other day, or like once every 3 days is kind of what ends up happening. And I think it's just like, you've seen it everywhere else. You just need to like keep a conscious eye on your fiber intake, and you need to keep a conscious eye on how much water you're drinking. And like for me, like when all else failed, I'm lactose intolerant. So I just would be like, well, we're just going to have a pasta, and we're going to put some cream of chicken stroganoff in there. So that was just kind of my like, if all else failed, we're going to like lactose it up, which may not be like the most healthy thing to do, but like when all else failed, that was kind of like my, like, if I needed to be desperate. But I don't want to make like light of some people who are honestly suffering, where they they have some real issues. So be careful with that, and make sure you like discuss that with your provider if you're having issues with like having really irregular bowel movements, because you need to be careful and like be aware of like what's like a normal fiber intake for you before you start this entire process, and whether or not you need to just maybe start supplementing it, or just be like, okay, I need to start like, maybe I just need to start with avocado toast in the morning, or I need to buy gummies and take fiber gummies. So you need to just be aware of that when you start the metformin, that you're gonna maybe have that side effect. And that was like probably the worst physical, like debilitating physical side effect for me, because it gave me like stomach cramps. And like if I was like, oh, I'm gonna go maybe for like a little light jog, and I couldn't do that during that week, so that was a little bit obnoxious. But that went away. I didn't like pull back at all on the medication, and that like, even though I had those stomach cramps, I just kind of kept, like I said, I made sure that I drank a lot of water, and that I made sure that I was including a lot of fiber in my diet. So do things to mitigate those symptoms, and be aware of like those things of like, you're not eating as much, you may not have as many bowel movements, and keep track of like what things are doing, what's normal for you. So I got through that pretty quickly, and now I've kind of like reached an equilibrium where it's not anywhere close to where I was before, when I was at that like my highest weight. And now I'm kind of like, it really does just depend what I'm eating and when I'm eating for that determinant. So while on metformin, it definitely does affect your like gastrointestinal tract for sure. Trying to think of some of the other things. Yeah, I would just say be aware of what you're doing when it comes to starting any new medication, and discuss anything that you're like not feeling is right with your doctor, and read the pamphlets for things that you know are going to be a concern for you. Like like I said, my biggest concern was like my stomach getting upset, and I would say nausea was probably like the least of any of my side effects, but I did everything I could to not have that. So I think if you have any questions, like comment and ask. But like now I can pretty much roll out of bed and like on an empty stomach just take my pills if I want to, because my body is so used to taking them, and I don't even have to really like think about it. So eventually you do get used to just taking them like any other pill, and you don't even have to like do these things to take them. So they're not really like, it's not like ibuprofen or like I'm trying to think of other drugs that are really finicky. Like even the metformin, I don't really have to take it with a meal for it to like to not affect my body. So your body just kind of gets used to having these medications all the time. So you will just kind of get used to them eventually. But anyway, I'm going to try to keep making a couple other one of these. I really want to just make like kind of an update. I did like measurements yesterday of everything, and it was like pretty wild about some of the stuff where I ended up losing weight, because I hadn't really done that since I'd been hitting this kind of like plateau of where I've wanted to maintain my weight, and it's been pretty cool. But yeah, if you have any questions about side effects, you can either ask here, and like I said, go to the Hers Weight Loss Reddit, and there's going to be someone there that has like the same stuff you have for sure, that's in the same place you are. So I'll see you next time. But yeah, see you later.